We're back! Why did I start off with Randy Quaid, ladies and gentlemen? Because if you weren't mad at him enough already for that video that he put out the other day where he put a face mask of Rupert Murdoch on his wife and then pretended to, or apparently did, have fornications with his wife, he's the reason why I shaved I wanted to trim my beard. Because when I saw that video of Randy Quaid and he's talking about how Rupert Murdoch screwed him, and I'm watching and saying, dude's not doing himself any favors with the way he looks. You know, that beard looks kind of crazy. His hair makes him look like a weirdo. And I'm like, oh shit. Hashtag confession through projection, self-analysis. And I thought that my beard was getting a little bit too bushy on the sides, where I was looking too bushy on the sides. So I just went to trim it. And apparently I trimmed it 2.5. Just remind me in the future, 2.5 on that clipper thing, razor, is too short. But I could use some sunlight anyhow. The weather's starting to pick up here in Florida. So I'll go tan, exfoliate, and she shall be grown back. What the hell? Look, I started with the only PG-13, or like, I guess PG, not PG-13, video from Randy Quaid that I could find. You could go look up the video for morbid curiosity. But Viva looking in the mirror, but still has a man for... Yeah, well, my wife said, Viva, you might want to think about trimming your hair. And I said, don't you ever say that again. She said, it's losing its volume. Yeah, but I was thinking, actually, if there were ever a time that I could cut my hair because freedom has been attained, it would have been after the pardons of the 1,500 Jan 6 political prisoners. But no, I'm keeping it. I like it. And I'm going to grow the beard back. It's just going to grow back evenly. And I'm going to trim the sides so that it doesn't look like it's growing as far out on the side as it is down, because that just looks weird. Now I can do my blue steel face much more easily. Good afternoon, everybody. Share the link around. We are going to have a good one today because yesterday was all about Canada. Today's going to be all about America, and it's going to be about some lingering injustices from the January 6 prosecutions, the January 6 pardons, and we've got a great guest. I think everybody knows his real name. It's CanCon, C-A-N-N-C-O-N. I'm fairly certain his real name is out there, but I don't want to be the one to divulge it if it's not. I was going to do it as a joke. I'll wait until he gets on. But I want to start with one thing before we even bring on our guest, CanCon. I know his name is public. I'm such a neurotic idiot. It is crippling sometimes. I wanted to start with a video where everyone's like, Viva, speaking of Jan 6, did you hear the news of a Jan 6er who was killed in a traffic stop? And I got the links. I'm going to play this, and then we're going to talk about it. And I'm just going to warn everybody, be skeptical of everything. And not skeptical that it happened or didn't happen. Just don't jump to conclusions too quick.
We're learning somebody involved in the January 6th riot on the Capitol, pardoned by President Trump, has been shot and killed during a traffic stop in Indiana.
So pause right there. Understand what is going to be happening now with everything that happens to every one of the pardoned Jan 6ers. The media will be looking for the bad actors to get back to bad acting, and they will pick on that and harp on it. It's sort of like what they did with COVID. They're going to look for examples, some shocking videos to whip up public sentiment. And so here, you know that it's going to, anyone whose Jan 6 tragedy befalls them, if they get COVID, you know that they're going to run with that. If they commit a crime, you know that they're going to run with that. And listen to this.
State police are looking into what happened. They say a deputy tried to arrest Matthew Huddle when, as they put it, an altercation happened between the officer and Huddle, which resulted in the officer shooting his gun. Ryan Riley is following this story for us.
Shooting his gun.
What else do we know?
Look at this guy.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the first major news stories to emerge from one of these January 6 defendants who is pardoned. I mean, this is...
Understand that. They're telling you what they're looking for. This is one of the first major news stories to break regarding one of the pardoned Jans, because they are literally like the vulture cockroaches that they are, scouring the interwebs to see if anything bad that they can say is karma happens to a Jan 6er, to see if any Jan 6er does something bad. Any Jan 6er that commits a bona fide crime now, you know they're going to say, this wouldn't have happened if he had been incarcerated because of his Jan 6 conviction.
Something that a lot of my sources have been expecting for a while. Wasn't sure necessarily when it was going to first fall, but this is probably the trickle of stories we're going to get on January 6 going.
It's not the trickle of stories you're going to get. It's the flow avalanche that you're going to make, because every time it happens, you're going to make news of it. It's not happening. You're making it happen. 1,500, 1,600 people pardoned. I don't know what the rate of criminality is. Let's just say it's 6 per 1,000. You're going to have 6 stories. You can predict that.
Forward, it'll be about people who committed other crimes outside of this. Because remember, while there were certainly a lot of people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th and didn't have a long criminal record, and might even have a no criminal record at all, and were citizens otherwise, upstanding citizens otherwise, according to their neighbors, there was this whole contingent of these January 6 rioters who had some really awful criminal histories behind them. Domestic abuse, really ugly assaults on their partners and wives, child molestation cases, these DUI cases. There's a lot of drug problems, a lot of alcohol problems, and now I think some of these January 6 prosecutors are wondering, what's going to be the next story to drop, what's going to come out of this next, and what these offenders are going to do going.
I'll break it there because I want to bring in CanCon. Oh, his name is on his thing. It's Brian Lupo, everybody. I'm such a neurotic idiot. The bottom line, by the way, they're going to make news out of all of them. The bottom line also, I don't jump to police abuse, though I'm skeptical when someone gets shot in a traffic stop. In this particular case, I went to look into the criminal history of the individual who was shot, spent 2.5 years in prison for felony child battery, because apparently he savagely injured a child back in the day, had alcohol problems, had an he was awaiting trial, I believe, or sentencing on a DUI. The other thing is some of these men are broken and they're going to be pissed at cops and they're going to do stupid things and lash out when they get pulled over. Like the guy who got released from prison. Forget the guy. He was the one who tried to strangle a cop. He got out, won a civil settlement of $750,000 and gets shot dead in a traffic stop because he starts to strangle the cop who pulled him over. All right. We'll talk about this in a second. Brian, bringing you in. See, this is where you look very, hold on. I'm going to back up. This is where being neurotic. But everyone knows Brian is like 6 inches taller than me in real life. This is where being neurotic, it becomes a little bit crippling, a little bit debilitating. You don't want to make a mistake, but then you do stupid things. Brian, everybody knows who you are, but just in case, for those who are meeting you for the first time.
My name is Brian Lupo, go by CanCon, Cannabis Conservative. I'm a writer at Gateway Pundit. I also host several shows over on Badlands Media, as well as my own podcast. And thank you so much for having me.
What I love is that we've run into each other twice now at what I'm starting to refer to as the Florida Circuit of Journalism. The last one was at Enrique Tarrio's press conference. Where was it before that? I'm totally Mar-a-Lago. That's right, for the when you had your debut as a moderator on a Trump endorsed panel as the big man showed up. When I got to introduce the president of these United States of America. Brian, so we were talking at Enrique Tarrio's conference afterwards. We had a coffee, Cuban coffee, delicious. Apparently, it's a sacrilege to ask for. I asked for. I can't drink coffee without cream in it. I got a look, both from Brian and the man behind the counter. And you were talking to me about 2 of the stories that you're working on or have been consistently working on, both of which blew my mind. Both of which related to Jan 6, where one common theme now is that there's a number of Jan 6ers or Jan 6 ancillary or incidental who are still behind bars, but for reasons that transcend or go beyond the Jan 6 conviction and pardon for which they were convicted. So, I mean, offhand, I knew of 4, but I think you might know of 4 or more. Who are the individuals currently still behind bars? And we're going to get to Jeremy Brown in particular. So excuse me, I don't know their names off the top of my head, and I really should. There's 10 in total. Last time I checked, Larry Brock on X has been following the still incarcerated J6ers. My focus has been on Jeremy Brown. I think what happened to Jeremy Brown in our federal courts in Florida and Tampa was a grave injustice. I believe that the FBI planted evidence against Jeremy Brown. I believe the U.S. Attorney's Office in Tampa was unbelievably unethical in how they presented that case to the jury. And Jeremy Brown was overlooked as a J6er in terms of the pardons, because in the Tampa case, he was restricted from being able to make a J6 argument during the case. And so J6 never once came up throughout the whole trial. And this was an effort to keep out the whistleblower, path that Jeremy Brown took. He was visited by Department of Homeland Security and the FBI.
in December of 2020 and asked if he would be a confidential human source for an event that was taking place in January. And he refused, and he recorded the conversation with their knowledge. And he held on to that until Director Wray came out and told the American public that there were no FBI agents or federal agents in the crowd in DC on that day. And Jeremy blew the whistle on that, exposed the recordings that he had. And then from there, he immediately became a target for the DOJ.
Can we? So my audience is not going to be as familiar with any of this as your audience. Jeremy Brown, starting from the get-go before Jan 6, what did he do? What was he doing in life? Was he law enforcement before Jan 6?
So Jeremy Brown was a 20-year retired master sergeant in the U.S. Army Special Forces Green Berets, which is like, the elite of the elite, some of the best special operators that we have in the world. And he served 20 years in that. He was part of the Bo Bergdahl mission, a U.S. Army deserter who abandoned his post, ran off and joined the Taliban, or was picked up by the Taliban, and for 5 years was in their captivity. And Jeremy Brown's unit was tasked with going and recovering that. And like I said, he retired after 20 years of faithful service and just wanted to live a quiet life in Tampa and be, just a normal everyday citizen.
Just also to refresh everybody's memory about Bo Bergdahl. What was his? I always get
Bergdahl, Bergdahl.
So to remind everybody, when they rescued Bo Bergdahl, American servicemen died in that rescue mission.
Yes,
and he was part of that. He was part of that rescue mission.
Correct.
Okay, and so that's his career, unblemished, untarnished, a man of honor and good repute. Pre-Jan 6, how did he become aware? Who came to him talking about an event that is coming to be, and what would be the context in which anyone would have approached him?
So in December of 2020, before Donald Trump had made any announcements about January 6th and a rally in January 6th, he was approached by Department of Homeland Security and FBI on two separate occasions, once at his house and once out in public. Both times he recorded the interactions with their permission. And, these are publicly available. He's published them. You can still to this day see him. Gateway Pundit has them up. A couple other, I think InfoWars has them up. A couple other outlets have them up. And they basically were trying to recruit him to be a confidential human source. And throughout his time in the Green Berets, Jeremy Brown had acted or worked in congruence with Joint Terrorism Task Force before they were weaponized against the American people, when they actually did work on overseas actual terrorists and not trying to weaponize MAGA or whatever it may be, and turning all their resources to, not all their resources, but a chunk of their resources to domestic terrorism. So Jeremy was familiar with the process of being a human source, a confidential human source, and familiar with the JTTF and how they kind of operate things.
Okay, and they approach him out of the blue.
Yeah, unsolicited.
And he starts, and he says, "I'm going to record this conversation." They ask him if he wants to be a CHS for an upcoming event, undisclosed, and he says no.
Yeah, well, so he had recently joined the Oath Keepers, which of course is, their name's been dragged through the mud. Oath Keepers and Proud Boys. We just covered the Proud Boys, and so his name was dragged through the mud, and so I'm sure there was some sort of a flag on his name. And as soon as they saw Oath Keepers and Green Beret, they automatically assumed that this is somebody that perhaps they could, squeeze and get them to, work on their behalf. And this happens all the time. I mean, we found out during the OIG's report on January 6th that there were at least, 24 or 32 confidential human sources in there. Dan Bongino says all the time that he knows 100% for a fact that there were federal agents in there, because he has federal agents that were friends that sent him pictures from that day of them in the crowd. And so, this isn't something that's new. The federal government trying to infiltrate these organizations, especially domestic organizations that are constitutional. Militias are in the Constitution. It's in the Second Amendment, right?
Well, absolutely. A well-regulated militia for the, I forget what the rest of it is. Is the idea, though, that they can pinch a guy who's got an unblemished military history because of his association with a verboten group? Like they say, we know that you're in the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers. We'll ruin you if you don't help us.
Well, I don't know about ruin you necessarily. I think they just assume that they'll be compassionate to their mission. You know, they'll be somebody that just got out and understands, you know, how intelligence gathering works, human intelligence, etc. I don't know that they would have gone after him had he not blown the whistle and put this out there that there was, you know, some planning involved in this.
Okay, so now it makes a little more sense to me as they say, well, you're one of our brothers. You're in the Oath Keepers. Give us some information if you're so amenable.
Yeah.
Okay. He says no. He's got these 2 recordings. He does nothing with them. The events of January 6th occur. He was in the vicinity. I don't know exactly where he went. If he breached restricted areas.
So on January 6th, Jeremy Brown was there as a security, providing security for one of the speaker's mothers. I believe it was for the speaker. So one of the permitted speakers, somebody that is allowed to be there, has a permit with U.S. Parks, and he was acting as security for the mother of that speaker. Never went inside the Capitol, not accused of any violence whatsoever, and was hit with 2 misdemeanor trespass charges.
He was. I'll see if I can get the name. It doesn't really matter. He was the security for a VIP guest at the Stop the Steal rally. So he's there on the side of evil, according to the government, but he's there providing security to someone who's there for the Stop the Steal rally, from whence the so-called insurrection originated. Okay. He goes down to January. Well, okay, actually, I'm not sure. Offhand, I know this. The Stop the Steal rally, what was the proximity of that rally to the Capitol building itself?
I think it was on the Capitol grounds, but it was like out in the grass around the perimeter. It wasn't. Right. It wasn't like in the terrace or anything like that. I don't believe.
All right, so he's doing that. The events of January 6th break out. Do you know when he gets arrested? When they confront him for his participation?
I believe he was arrested in September of 2021.
Okay,
so this is a good 8 or 9 months later.
And standard charges?
No. So he had the 2 misdemeanor charges in Washington, D.C., but they used those 2 misdemeanor charges in Washington, D.C. They went judge shopping and went from judge to judge to judge until they finally found a magistrate who would sign off on a search warrant for his property in Florida, which I don't really know how you justify that. When they went down to Florida in September to conduct this raid, you know, Jeremy's girlfriend, long-term girlfriend. So I kind of refer to her as his wife all the time, but, his common, you know, girlfriend, long-term girlfriend says, when the FBI showed up on that day to search the house, they detained both of them first. And she had asked them on camera, "What are you searching for?" And the agent's response was, "When we find it, we'll let you know."
Unreal. And they end up finding various firearms, some of which are short-barreled without registration. So they get him on some firearms charges, but there's a little bit of a big but to that story. What else do they allegedly find, or at least claim to have found on his property?
So they end up charging Jeremy with 10 counts. He gets 2 counts for each for a firearm, a short-barreled rifle, and a .410 shotgun that had the buttstock sawed off. It was a family heirloom that was left to him by his brother, who committed suicide in 2019. It was left to him as, you know, inheritance. I don't even know if Jeremy had ever seen it. It was packed up in a box. You know, and it's a small shotgun. .410 is like a BB gun on steroids.
If I may stop you there, his brother took his own life.
Correct, in 2019.
Was his brother a military as well?
That I don't know. I don't know that.
Okay.
So he has these 2 weapons. Then, as they're serving the warrant, they go into his RV, which was, you know, on property. They go into his RV and immediately they call for the whole site to be secured and everybody to evacuate. They found live ordnance. And by the way, a key point in this is, Jeremy Brown, being, you know, a Green Beret, Special Forces, you know, he had 14 security cameras throughout his property. You know, he's a secure guy, secure oriented individual, and they turned those off. They turned those off so that you can't. I don't know. They initially said it was when they conduct raids for SOPs, they turn off security camera footage, but then they left it off the entire time. So this agent goes into the RV, finds these 2 M67 fragmentation grenades, standard stuff we used in the military, takes them out, has him and a bomb tech there. I think it was Hillsborough County bomb tech. They take these grenades, which they're wrapped in duct tape. And that's something we do in the military. When I was in the Marines, we did the same thing. You wrap duct tape around it to protect the spoon. So that, if a pin pops out, it's like a safety, right? It's like a safety device. They take these 2 grenades and they put them in the grass and they photograph them in the grass. Now you're an attorney. You got to understand how you just completely and totally spoiled that evidence.
Well,
when you
it's reminiscent of the FBI staging the photograph of the classified documents. On the one hand, you're staging the appearance of the evidence. On the other hand, from DNA perspective, from tainting the evidence perspective, Lord knows what's on the grass, who touches it in between. I'm not an expert, but I do know that I have watched a lot of movies, and you just bag it, tag it, make sure that it doesn't get contaminated. But most importantly, not take photographs that have altered the original state of the evidence, of the so-called evidence.
Exactly. So they take those photos. They eventually bring everybody back. They go on to find a CD. Well, they claim they found a CD. They also claim they found a classified document. So that's what they had: 2 guns, 2 grenades, a classified CD, and a classified document. So Jeremy gets arrested. He was already detained at this point in the back of a car. They bring him to prison, and he's locked up from there. He doesn't post bond. He doesn't want to take bond. He serves his time. Now, here's something, Jeremy acknowledges possession of those, the 2 firearms. He's a Second Amendment absolutist, as am I, and believes that, shall not be infringed is explicitly clear. There is no evidence of, any sort of a problem whatsoever from short-barreled rifles in terms of the commission of crimes. There, it's an absurd law. The National Firearms Act in general is an absurd law. And he's a Second Amendment absolutist. And given Bruin versus New York State Pistol Association, SBR should be legal anyways. So that's neither here nor there. So you want to fast forward to the trial?
Well, so yeah, let's. That gives us about everything that we need to know for the preamble. I guess the suggestion that the evidence was planted is going to come up during the trial.
Yes.
It highlights the fact that these are incidental charges, not related to January 6th and not related to the January 6th pardon. And these are federal charges, not state charges, although they come federally out of the state of Florida. Just my own personal curiosity: when you have a shotgun that is a shorter barrel than legal, is it because it's necessarily sawed off, or at some point they said too short of a barrel, we're illegalizing this, and if you want to continue owning it, you have to have one? But what's the practical purpose of it?
Well, this wasn't even the barrel being sawed off. This was the stock. So the part that goes in your shoulder was cut off. So it wasn't even the barrel that was sawed off on this.
Okay, and I presume the argument is that the only reason people do that is to make it easier to conceal, to, I don't know, rob liquor stores or something, if my memories of 80s gang movies serves me of any useful purpose. So they get him on these charges as a result of this raid, which is Jan 6 related only. And then they take him to trial on this, but not on Jan 6.
Correct. So this was what we call the fruit of the poison tree. And this was, what I believe to be an unlawful warrant that was served on somebody over 2 misdemeanors in a completely separate jurisdiction, signed off by a non-constitutional judge, a non-Article 3 judge. Magistrates aren't in the U.S. Constitution, in order to take away his Fourth Amendment rights and allow a generalized search with no specific targets in mind, cutting off the cameras so that there's no oversight and accountability for, what took place during the search. And then you'll see why all this is relevant when we get into the evidence stuff.
Okay. So all this, he goes to trial. When did his trial start, and how long did it last?
I believe it was in December of 2022. And it lasted about 7 days.
Okay.
I know there was one weekend because I ended up going up to my buddy's house an hour north of there. So yeah, I think it was 7 days.
Okay. Outcome is conviction, obviously, but what were the evidentiary issues that arose during the trial?
So during the opening arguments, Jeremy's attorney had said that we are going to show you that the FBI planted evidence against Jeremy Brown. Like I said, the 2 gun charges, that's kind of irrelevant here because he wasn't really necessarily challenging those. But getting into the grenades and the classified CD are the two, things that we need to focus on here. When they went through the grenades and he was found guilty of the grenades, he was found not guilty of the CD. And that's pretty important. That's pretty important for this. There were 4 counts relating to the CD, and all 4 of those counts, he was found not guilty. When it comes to the M67 grenades, they sent them off to forensics to have these grenades looked at. They found textile fibers in the tape. They found human, I don't know if it was human hair and pet hair, I believe, on the tape. They found fingerprints and they found DNA. None of those pieces of evidence matched anything relating to Jeremy Brown. They took samples of all his carpet, of all his, anything that was textile in his home and in his RV. They took hair samples from Jeremy, from his girlfriend, from his dogs, from his cats, all of that. None of that matched. They took all their fingerprints. None of that matched. And they checked their DNA. None of that matched. Ironically, they didn't go beyond that. They didn't check anybody that was on the scene, anybody that might have handled them. None of that was checked, but they did check Jeremy, and there was absolutely no match whatsoever. So then throughout the trial, they bring on all these experts in the military and logistics in the military, and they talk about these grenades and how M67 frag grenades in the military are tracked by lot size, by lot number. It's not individually tracked, but it's tracked as like 40,000 grenades were made in this lot, and this is where they went throughout their lifetime. And it's called a Dodic report. And they brought this Dodic report and said, hey, look, these grenades were in Iraq and Afghanistan. Oh, Jeremy was in Iraq and Afghanistan as a Green Beret. Of course he was. Everybody that served from 2001 till just recently had been to either Iraq or Afghanistan for the most part, especially if you're in a Victor unit or anything like that. But they never went as far as trying to line up the dates and the times to which they were over there. Here's another thing that's I don't think they emphasized enough during the trial. When you are deployed, and I've been deployed a couple times, when you come back home from a combat zone, before you get on a plane to go back to the United States, you go through customs. And when I say customs, it's like customs times 1,000 compared to what we're used to.
I guess the punchline is you're not sneaking through with 2 live grenades in any realm of the universe. You're not getting on a plane.
You're not sneaking through with 1 live round, that big, a 5.56 round, 3 inches. You're not sneaking in with a round, nonetheless, a 3 or 4 pound grenade. It's not happening. They go through everything.
No, as you're talking and you're saying like, yeah, he was in Afghanistan, he was in Iraq. None of his DNA was on the grenade, but it could have been he wrapped it when he was in Iraq and then took it back from there, and that's why it's got other people's DNA, other people's pet hair, animal hair from wherever. One question I believe I forgot the answer. When did he reveal the recordings of being approached by whomever to be a CHS in respect of the charges and the trial? It was before all of them, right?
This was before the raid. Like this, okay. When he released the DHS FBI recordings, he wasn't on their radar. Okay, like he wasn't being, and it was post January 6th because he obviously felt that this was a made it happen on purpose, and he had some evidence of advanced knowledge of authorities of something going to happen or them going to do something. Then they target him, and they target him with extreme prejudice, allegedly, with bogus charges, an abusive raid, and then arguably planting of evidence being the 2 grenades for which he was convicted. Yes. And on misdemeanor charges with no violence whatsoever, and misdemeanor charges in a permitted area. He was permitted to be there. They were permitted to have access to that area. And they only charged him.
I'm going to just double check a question as to when he was charged, because some people might have charged versus arrested. Okay. The trial itself was in what jurisdiction? Was it in Florida or was it
Tampa? Middle district of Florida in Tampa. Yeah.
Who was the judge? If I not by name, but political persuasion, if I may, or appointment. I don't know if you ever looked into that. I'll find that out in a second. Okay. So he does the trial, and this is the evidence with the 2 grenades for which they convict him and sentence him.
Correct. So there's a couple other things that were interesting about the grenades. First, the customs. It's very, very difficult to bring grenades back, bring anything back. There's dogs that search your gear, explosive ordnance dogs, the individuals that go through every single piece of equipment, every single thing. If you have magazines, they check to make sure your magazines are empty. If you have grenade pouches, that they're empty, your sea bag is dumped out and every piece of clothing is gone through. If you have boxes, you have to unlock them and open them up. You're not sneaking 2 grenades through there. It's very unlikely. So Jeremy gets back to the US, and the morning of the morning that the FBI showed up at his house, there's this woman named Kathy Chamberlain, who was his campaign manager when Jeremy ran for Congress. And she was talking with Jeremy that morning. And Jeremy told her, I think today is the day that they're going to show up. There had been some conversations beforehand where, the FBI was alluding to a search. And Jeremy had said, I think today is the day they're going to show up. So if when people think of special forces, they always think of, these run and gun guys like the movies and all this stuff. These are incredibly intelligent people. These are people that have mindsets and thoughts beyond our comprehension in terms of, tactics and everything else. If he knew that the FBI was coming, he would not have had, and he actually did have grenades. They would not have been sitting on his flak jacket in 2 pouches in his RV out in the open for anybody to see.
It's an orgy of evidence, Brian.
Yes.
Straight out of Minority Report. The judge, incidentally, her name is Susan C. Bucklew, appointed by Bill Clinton. So that's at least, if I haven't made a mistake, that's the judge, to explain maybe a few things here. How long was he sentenced to?
I believe 7 years.
And he's still there, rotting away. And then, but there is I don't want to get too conspiratorial. There's concern for his well-being. What is? Okay, sorry, I'm going to cut you off there. So he knew it's coming. He knew the raid was coming. Allegedly has 2 live grenades. How the hell he got them, nobody knows. How the hell everybody's DNA and pets, other than his own, makes the textile means what exactly?
Fibers.
Okay. No DNA evidence connecting him to those things. They put him on the grass. They take their pictures. They get all the evidence. The smoking gun. Take him to trial. Convicted. 7 years. And so now what's the status now?
So I mean, he's still he's appealing it. He's still going through the process. They had moved him up to DC for his J6 case, the 2 misdemeanors in DC. When those were pardoned, those actually did get pardoned, I believe. And so they moved him from there. He's, I guess, in transit back to Florida, I guess, but he's currently in Kentucky, in a prison in Kentucky with, I think it's Darren Ball, I think is another one of the J6ers that's been arrested and is in Kentucky. And there's a lot of controversy around him too. A lot of controversy around him. Apparently the guards beat him to the point where he has like teeth that came through his face from the beatings, and they're trying to keep him locked up so he doesn't get out there. And this is the belief of people in his network. They don't want it out there. What they did to this guy, Darren Ball. I think it's Darren Ball. Don't quote me.
It might be Daniel Ball.
Daniel Ball.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And he was involved in Jan 6, key points, involvement in the case. He was accused of throwing an explosive device into a tunnel. I'd love to know what that explosive device was. He's receiving a 5-year probation sentence for unrelated crimes when he was arrested for his actions on January 6th. I mean, I didn't realize. I had on Chance Upmore, who reached out to me, says, I've got incidental felony charges resulting from their misdemeanor raid on my place, drugs and firearms. There's a bunch of them, and there's still a bunch that are currently locked up that have not gone under the radar, have just been they have not been detected because some people don't appreciate that this is going on, and then others say, well, all right, if they got them on other crimes, they don't appreciate the fruit of the poison tree. I've seen a lot of concern on the internet that people suggest they're trying to end Jeremy Brown's life through horrible conditions, putting him in shit spots. I mean, I don't know what a prison in Kentucky is like compared to a prison in Florida. But I mean, you're deeper in the weeds. What are your thoughts on whether or not it's they hope something bad happens to him?
So he was pretty content in the as content as you can be in prison, but in the prison in Florida. I remember specifically when he had first initially gotten transferred to the new prison that he was at long-term in Florida. His girlfriend had told me that it's a much better facility. They actually get real food and, that kind of stuff. So where he's at in Kentucky right now, from what I hear, it's heinous conditions. It's absolutely atrocious. There's actually calls. I have it posted on my X, for people to go out there and alert the fire chief, the fire inspector to not crimes, but violations, fire code violations in the prison right now, which I'm sure we could probably find in any Bureau of Prisons facility. But yeah, they're not good conditions. The other thing that's concerning is when a lot of people are talking about the whistleblower, the DHS FBI thing. When Jeremy was on my podcast last year, he was talking about another charge, one of the other charges against him, a classified document that he had in his possession. And I'll explain to you in a minute, like how that was not a classified document. But in that podcast, he alluded to that document having incriminating information about the Obama administration committing treason during the Bo Bergdahl rescue mission. Now, I don't know the specifics about it. Jeremy didn't get into the specifics about it. But I know there was a lot of controversy around that operation when it took place. And it was really bizarre how a Green Beret operation, they had cameras on the ground in Afghanistan to document this for the public, this interaction. I mean, you have a camera on the ground as the Blackhawks are flying overhead, and the camera's on the ground with Taliban people. So I don't know if the Taliban documented it and then gave it to the U.S. to say, hey, this is our propaganda video. I don't know. But a lot of strange circumstances around that. And Jeremy seems to think that there was stuff that would incriminate the Obama administration.
And then they claimed that it was a classified document. In reality, what he had was from what you explained to me when we spoke, was an altered template of sorts that actually was not contained no classified information whatsoever. And that charge was ultimately, was it dropped, or did he just not get convicted on it?
He was convicted on that.
Oh, so he was convicted on the classified documents.
Yeah. So throughout the trial, this is mind blowing to me. Throughout the trial, every time a classified documents expert would testify, the prosecution would ask all these questions about how severe it is to have a classified document, blah, blah, blah. And Jeremy's attorney would simply ask, was it a draft or was it a final document? And they would say, well, it doesn't matter either way. It's classified information. Jeremy Brown took the stand in his own defense, which is, in a criminal trial where you're facing, quite a bit of time behind bars. That's unusual. And so he took the stand in his own defense, and they started questioning him about, his attorney started questioning him about the documents. And what Jeremy had done is, when he was flying home from Afghanistan, he wanted to, expedite the paperwork when you get back stateside. And so he had his own personal computer, which is not a SIPR computer. It doesn't have secure communications. You can't do classified work on it. And so what he did is he wrote a draft template, and the template had no classified information in it whatsoever. And when he got back stateside and had access to a SIPR computer where you can send classified info, he inserted all of the classified information into the document and sent it up. The document that he had in his possession was not classified. None of the expert witnesses for the U.S. Attorney's Office and the prosecution, nobody actually did their due diligence on the information to check if any of it was actually classified or not. And I still don't know how the jury found him guilty of this. But even more concerning was the fact that the U.S. attorneys, when they found out that they'd been had and that they got punked by Jeremy on this document, that they didn't immediately dismiss those charges. They know the U.S. attorney had to have known, oh crap, we got caught. This is not a draft. This is not a classified document. We should dismiss these charges. And instead they let them stand. And somehow the jury convicted him of that document.
It's so effing amazing. Just to bring up the reporting, I think this was reporting from the time, give or take, where they say this guy's such a bad guy. He had a whiteboard in his property that he listed for sale. This is November 2021. And on it, it said, at the bottom of it, he's talking about living off the grid. Good is written in red, better is written in blue, best is written in green, on hand is written black marker. All items listed under shoot, including flashbangs, are written in black marker, indicating by his hand. Your affiant has included a zoom screen. They say he had a dry erase board that listed food, illegal explosives, and other items necessary for life off the grid. So this guy's got to be clearly a menace to society. He gets convicted on the guns, classified documents, grenades, spending 7 years. The defense to the grenades is straight up, not mine, planted evidence.
Yes.
The defense to the classified documents is it wasn't classified. It was a template that contained no classified information. And the defense to the firearms is I didn't know or don't believe they need to be registered as Second Amendment rights.
Yes, but there's a whole piece of evidence there that we're skipping over, and that's this classified CD. So during the search of his property in the RV, the FBI alleged that they found a CD that had 4 classified documents from the Bergdahl mission on it. The only picture that they have of the CD allegedly in Jeremy Brown's RV is a picture of a folder on top of a folder and a little itty bitty corner of a CD jewel case sticking out the side, maybe 1 inch by 1 inch in a triangular shape. You can't see a CD. You can't see any classified markings, nothing. The staff specialist for the FBI that took pictures of the crime scene and documented everything claims that she never saw a classified CD in there, but they charged him for this. They show up like months later. They insert into evidence a photograph of the CD by itself on a table. Now, I don't remember if they alleged that that was in Jeremy Brown's property or if this was with the FBI, but either way, the table itself, the grain in the wood did not match any of the furnishings in Jeremy Brown's property whatsoever. And then further on the evidence receipt form, where they document all the evidence that was taken, you see all of the evidence that Jeremy Brown that they gathered from his property, and it's all in kind of chronological and location based order. So this is all in the RV, this is in the home, this is in the master bedroom, this is in until you get to the very last page. It's a 3-page long receipt. On the very last page, there's one single item, the CD, all by itself, and it's completely out of order with everything else in the report. So again, Jeremy says that was planted. I didn't have that CD. I've never seen that CD before in my life, and he was found not guilty of that. So first and foremost, who put that CD in that evidence? If that CD was there, how did it get there? And the jury found him not guilty. Did the FBI plant that? And how can you believe that the FBI would go as far as planting a CD, but they wouldn't plant the M67 frag grenades, which, by the way, the last known location of those grenades, the lot of grenades that they came from, is a black site in Kentucky. So those grenades are back stateside and could easily be transported if somebody wanted to set somebody up.
It's interesting. I mean, it is interesting how when they said they acquitted or found him not guilty on that charge, I guess they don't specify whether or not it was because it was planted evidence or they determined it wasn't classified. Like the details on why they don't retain that charge, you don't actually know. It's just that he's not found guilty on that particular charge.
Correct. But they argued throughout the case. They went through all the documents. They had classified briefings for all the jurists to show them the classified nature of the documents. There were IED reports, a trip report. No, the trip report was the last document. There were IED reports, a couple after action reports and stuff like that were classified on the CD. And so they made it perfectly clear that the CD did in fact contain classified information, but he was found not guilty of it. Interesting.
And his defense was, I never had it. I don't know how it got there.
Correct.
Okay. And that defense didn't work for the grenades because the grenades are big, bad, and scary. Where the hell do you get grenades anyhow? Like, having never been, you don't get them in Army surplus. They were in fact bona fide live grenades. It's not like they were Army surplus refilled or something.
Nope. They were live grenades. And like I said, Jeremy had at least some preclination that they were going to show up that day to raid his house. And he did not even attempt to hide them. I mean, if I knew the FBI was coming to raid my house, I'd be like, what do I have in here that could be used to incriminate me? I got a joint on my table. I better move that,
And they disabled all security cameras, so nobody knows what they did while they were there.
Yep.
All right. That's Jeremy Brown's situation. And he has obviously not been covered by the pardon. So he's going to be sitting there rotting away for another 6 years. I don't know how it works if you get 80% of time served and whatever, but
can I add one more thing?
Yeah, please.
So when Jeremy Brown took the stand, and this is really important because the jury asked to hear this again. When Jeremy took the stand, they played a clip of Jeremy's first phone call with his girlfriend when he was in prison. And, she called and he says, well, how bad is it? What did they take? And she started listing all these things that they took. And she said grenades and kept going. And Jeremy didn't immediately respond to that. And so the U.S. attorneys played that for the jury and said, this proves that Jeremy Brown knew the grenades were there and therefore he's guilty of this. Now, what they didn't play for them was later on in that conversation, about 10, 15 minutes later, they talk about having to explode live ordnance. And Jeremy says, what do you mean explode live ordnance? And she says, the frag grenades. He says, what the hell are you talking about? Frag grenades? I don't have any frag grenades. He does airsoft. All right. He plays airsoft and goes out in the woods and, does manly shit. Right. So he had airsoft grenades. He had, other types of legal grenades, like toys, essentially, And so when he saw grenades, that's what he was thinking. They took like my airsoft grenades or whatever it may be. You throw them in there.
Yeah, just so everybody understands, there's a legit airsoft grenade. It explodes and it sends little pellets, and if they nail you, then you have to say, "I'm out," and you come back for the next round.
Exactly. So he had those, and so when he first heard that, that's all he was thinking was they took airsoft grenades, and then when she said live ordnance, or they had to destroy the frag grenades, he said, "What do you mean frag grenades?" And so that was deceptive as hell. Now, what's important about that is when the jury was deliberating, they actually came back out and asked to listen to that clip again. So that clip had a key influence on their decision to convict him on those grenades.
Did they get his later statements from that same recording in as evidence, or were they not allowed to use that?
I don't know. I'm not going to comment on the procedures. All I know is his defense was less than desirable. Is that audio recording available publicly? That I don't know. I can find out for you, and I can get back to you on that. I don't believe so, because federal court doesn't have cameras and all that fun stuff. So I don't know if it's available or not. Okay, we'll find that out. And so meanwhile, bottom line, he's still in there, and there's concern for everybody's safety who's in that system, but people believe he should get out because all of this was fruits of a poison tree and arguably falsified evidence, retaliatory conduct from the people who failed to recruit him for their CHS purposes. And it is currently under appeal. I mean, do you know the status of the appeal? It's still ongoing. He's making the Bruin argument, Bruin versus New York State, arguing that in the context of the founding of our country, we had a weapon called a blunderbuss, which was a short-barreled rifle, had a flared opening at the end of the muzzle, and it's essentially a short-barreled rifle. And so he's making the argument that in the context of our founding, this was a lawful firearm, and every firearm should be lawful, by the way. Just throwing that out there. Okay, it's amazing. And speaking of firearms, I think we do have to. You blew my mind with some of the Michael Byrd stuff, in terms of his history and his future after having shot and killed Ashli Babbitt point blank and hailed as a hero. We can talk about that for a few minutes? Yeah, sure. Okay. I know you'll tell me when you got to go. I won't hold you for longer than you can. I got about 10 minutes. Okay, excellent. And then after that, I'm going to move the party on over to Rumble. Maybe I do it. No, I'll do it after. Okay, Michael Byrd. So we know who Michael Byrd is. He's the guy who shot Ashli Babbitt point blank in the upper torso. I'm following the chat. I'm not getting into the discussion as to whether or not Ashli Babbitt was actually shot. People are entitled to believe what they want, and I don't have to entertain everybody's theories, even if they sincerely hold them. If they're harmless to everybody except Ashli's family, I presume. And I indirectly ran into Ashli's mother at the during the live stream with Lang when he was outside the DC gulag, and she's a broken woman. There's no question about that. Michael Byrd. Okay. He's got a history of being a jackass. He's got a present of being an idiot, and he's got the future or after the events of arguably getting paid off for what he did. Starting with we all knew that he had some disciplinary issues. He left his gun in a bathroom at the DC building for an hour, just the type of thing, idiots do. He had some other issues that I was unaware of that you mentioned to me. Yeah. So first and foremost, the bathroom thing is a massive deal because it was in the visitor center of the U.S. Capitol. So this is, and for 1 hour, there was a gun on the the sink area, the hand wash station of the U.S. Capitol bathroom. So anybody that's been through security, been through a secure checkpoint in the Capitol building with all of our elected officials who need so much more protection than we do, apparently, that gun was available to any of them for over an hour and was only found by another U.S. Capitol police officer, not by, like, Michael Byrd didn't go back and say, like, hey, I left my gun in here. It's insane. It's insane. I don't even know why you would take your gun out at I don't know. Like, I don't know how it works or something. I don't know.
and he leaves it there, doesn't realize somebody else finds it, or maybe he forgot where he left it. From what I understood, it wasn't the first time either that he left his gun somewhere where it wasn't supposed to be left. But set that aside. Any sanction for that, or any demotion, disciplinary proceedings?
I think he probably got like a slap on the wrist for that.
All right. What were the other ones?
So he had an event years before that, which was interesting. It was an officer-involved shooting where he was off duty at his house, and it was early in the morning. Something went bump in the night. He goes outside, and this is according to a letter from Barry Loudermilk, Representative Barry Loudermilk, who chaired the Weaponization Committee subcommittee, who's now chairing the J6 subcommittee under the Judiciary. So we'll get a lot more now that subpoenas go through Jim Jordan instead of Brian Stile. So hopefully we'll get a lot more from Loudermilk. But Michael Byrd goes outside and he sees two vans out in front of the house. He makes this claim that the vans, when they saw him and he took his service weapon with him, they started driving towards him like they were going to run him over. And so Michael Byrd, when he spoke to the Office of Personnel Management or whatever, whoever it is that you go to for discipline, told them that he had fired into the windshield to try and stop a vehicle that was about to strike him. And then as it went by, he fired a couple more shots at it as it was driving past him. Well, they ended up catching up to the vans later, arrested the individuals, took the vans into evidence, and they ended up going through and doing a forensic assessment of the rounds in the van. Well, Byrd lied about the shots to the front of the van. The only shots that he took at the van were from behind. Like one went through, I think, like the gas tank, and one was through like the back quarter panel, like the where the opening for the gas tank is, not the gas tank itself. And so, there was a lie there, and he discharged his firearm unlawfully, or maybe lawfully, but he lied in the investigation to it. So, not a lot of credibility there. There's also like several referrals to the OPM, the Office of Personnel, as well, for issues that we don't know what they are. They're sealed, so we have no idea what these other issues are.
Amazing. And then tell me about the GoFundMe, which I'll mention the name because it's scoundrels like Michael Byrd that use GoFundMe. But after he shot and killed Ashli Babbitt, he was investigated. They decided not to. It was justified. He's facing civil wrongful death, but that's got to work its way through the system right now. And I'm not exactly sure what the status of that wrongful death suit claim is. He got I wouldn't call it a promotion, but what you told me is he got a signing bonus when he renewed his contract. That was
he did get a promotion. He's a captain now. He's no longer Lieutenant Michael Byrd. He's Captain Michael Byrd. So he did get a promotion.
Okay.
So he got a signing bonus, of a retention bonus of $36,000. All the other officers, according to Loudermilk's letter, only received $3,000. So Michael Byrd received, according to Loudermilk's letter, 12 times what the other Capitol police officers got as far as retention bonuses. Interestingly enough, he also had a Give Send Go, or excuse me, a GoFundMe set up by the Capitol Police, that raised $164,000 for him. Now, I can't help notice when numbers congruently fit together so perfectly into a nice little package, and he got a clean $200,000. 36 plus 164, 200,000. Whenever I see
after the shooting, I'm going to see if I can pull up the Give Send Go. The GoFundMe. What was the stated objective? Like help him retire or help him get therapy? I mean, maybe like legit, if he's traumatized for having shot and killed what he finds out to be an unarmed woman, veteran, maybe he's traumatized. What the hell was the purpose of this GoFundMe?
No idea. They also did $21,000 in security upgrades to Michael Byrd's house. Allegedly, I guess, under the guise of people were threatening to harm him or something. And during the 6 months that they were doing those upgrades to his home, he was afforded the opportunity to stay at the Distinguished Visitors Center at Joint Base Andrews. So when foreign dignitaries come in and we treat them, like diplomats, like high-ranking diplomats, he was staying in those quarters while they were doing the work on his home. So if I can, this is the interesting thing. I'm going to if I can share this image right.
I think you could share it on your side. On my end, I can't. Oh, you got it here. I'm going to add this to stage.
Yeah.
Let's go see what this.
So this is an email that was put out by Representative Loudermilk, and it's from Timothy Blodgett, and I believe. Let me just make sure, but Blodgett, I believe, is the chief of staff for the U.S. Capitol Police, and he was then, and he still is today. And Steve Marchese, who's a U.S. He's a staff member with the House of Representatives, got an email saying, Lieutenant Mike Byrd, he is very upset. It says Chairman was speaking with Lieutenant Mike Byrd. He is very upset with how he is being treated. He wants us to figure this out, and now. Sorry to dump this on you. I mean, maybe I'm being conspiratorial, but that sounds like a person that's arguing as if he has leverage. You know, a lieutenant in the Capitol Police telling a congressman, you know, this is what we need. Like, I'm mad at you for not getting me this money on time.
I've got to see it. It's amazing. I can't seem to find it. Surpasses its goal. The Gateway Pundit confirmed. Where is the link? Do we? It may or may not still be up. I'll see if I can find it afterwards. But yeah, it's wild.
It really is. It really is.
I don't know how these things work. What do you have to do to get promoted from it was a lieutenant to a captain?
Well, for one, not leave your firearm in a secure area for over an hour without realizing it, and only to have it recovered by somebody else in your department. You know, in the Marine Corps, if I had done that, my career would have been over. And that's, you know, as a Lance Corporal, a Corporal, a Sergeant, you know, if I was a lieutenant or a captain, I would be immediately. We had a gunnery sergeant that was relieved of duty because somebody accidentally put a set of NVGs in another platoon's armory. And this guy's leaving a gun in a secure area with 435 of our elected House members. It's wild. It's insane. And now he's a captain.
It's amazing. I can't seem to find the actual GoFundMe, but from reports at the time, January, give or take 2022, it raised $162,000 in 24 hours.
I think, let me see. Yeah, but by the way, that's absolutely unheard of.
I won't fault them because Give, Send, Go at the very least allows people to raise money for a defense, but there's a Give, Send, Go that's been set up for Luigi Mangione. And you go and you read some of the comments of the donations, and it will not make you feel happy or secure about overall. I mean, everyone's entitled to a defense, and everyone's entitled to raise money for their defense, and go F me, screwed people politically, depending on whether or not they like the cause underlying the defense. But it's the comments. One person said, there was one comment that said, kill 65,000 people with an algorithm, nothing. Killed one CEO, the world's up in arms. And like, man, that's that logic leads to very, very bad things.
Here, let me share this because this is fascinating as well. So this is another one of the emails from Barry Loudermilk on the committee. And this is from Michael Byrd on November 16th, 2021 to Thomas DeBias, who is and let me make shit.
Yeah,
I don't have
you want me to take it away?
No. You can leave it up. I don't have the article pulled up. I was trying to think. DeBias, I want to say he's general counsel for the U.S. Capitol Police, but don't quote me on that.
Enhance it if you can, or zoom in a little bit on the. There you go. Okay.
He says, this is what Michael Byrd said to DeBias. We play the game as you request, and then once we're in compliance, you guys change the rules on us. If we were aware that our situation would be looped in with everyone on the department, then we would have been better prepared. We were expecting this was for us, and everyone else has their own situation. They would all be handled on a case-by-case basis. The amount received for the retention fund was less than $24,000 after taxes. Please prepare a letter defining how we will be reimbursed for the security upgrades before we make any purchases. I'll have a credit card, blah, blah, blah.
Shit.
I know.
It's entitlement. I mean, it's
entitlement.
It's demands.
Entitlement's an understatement. We play the game you request. Yeah, I got questions.
Well, hopefully under the new administration, there will be a proper. I mean, they've already started their investigation, but a proper investigation. He was pardoned. Someone was saying in the chat, there's no statute of limitations for murder, but Michael,
he's been pardoned.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain.
Completely.
Hold on. Okay, I think it's conflicted. Hold on. Was Lieutenant Michael Byrd pardoned? I think I looked this up last week. Was he pardoned?
As far as I know, all the Capitol police officers and Metro police officers that testified were pardoned.
Yes, that's okay. So this is what I remembered from last week. Grok, for what it's worth, is saying no, he wasn't pardoned because the pardon did cover officers who testified, but I think only as pertains to their testimony. Claims suggesting that Biden pardoned him have been debunked by fact-checking organizations like Lead Stories Fact Check. Well, now I'm even more suspicious that it's true. Because the truth is they wouldn't know until he presented the document, and even Barnes didn't know what the disclosure requirements were for a pardon if he got one. They confirmed that there's no evidence of such a pardon, and Byrd did not testify before the January 6th committee. I don't know that you're. Let me just see here. Is a president required to disclose the existence? No. So then,
no.
A president is not legally required. We don't know.
A lot of people are speculating now that Biden may have pardoned himself in secret, so to speak.
Well, okay, that'll piss me off because I had a friendly prediction on Kalshi that he would pardon himself. It was like 2% odds, but by the rules, if he does it later, I don't think they're going to go back and honor that bet. That's wild.
Yep,
it's amazing,
insane. Yep. So I've got an article up on Gateway Pundit. If you search Michael Byrd, it'll be like the second article that pops up. If you guys want to read over that, going through all the letter from Loudermilk and all that evidence, you can read the emails as well. I've got them linked in there. I link, I bring all the receipts because we get flagged as far right blogs, so you have to be as thorough as possible in documenting everything. And so I did a pretty good job.
I have until I became aware. I always thought the Gateway Pundit was what they said it was.
Nope, we're not
radical far right. This was 5 years ago, but since then I've come to realize that InfoWars and Gateway Pundit I've never known Gateway Pundit to get anything radically wrong. Certainly thorough, but now I have a much more renewed trust in them. Brian, CanCon actual at on X. Where else can people find you?
Rumble.com/CanCon every day at 10 a.m. Eastern and covering daily news. So check it out.
Amazing. Thank you very much. The chat wants to have you back on, and man, it's good. I like picking the bigger brains of people who certainly know more about specific issues. The Michael Byrd, when we were talking, it absolutely blew my mind. I mean, I knew that he didn't get punished, didn't really appreciate he got a raise, couple hundred G's, extra security. The dude's rolling in it after having and the on the day of when Ashli got shot, I said, like, you got to expect unpredictable consequences for that type of behavior, but you don't expect to get executed point blank. And what we know now,
especially when you're 5'1" and the guy that executed you is like 6'3" and has 180 pounds on you.
No, but I remember, like, well, she had a backpack, but he wasn't even in the immediate proximity of protecting any specific politicians. Like, well, she could have gone here and you don't get to execute someone because what she could have done when she gets into another room with whatever you don't know is in the backpack. If that's the standard, what hell of a hellish standard to usher in.
Yep.
Brian, amazing stuff.
Thank you very much, Viva. Appreciate the opportunity.
We'll do it any time and every time. We'll do it again.
All right. Sounds good, sir. I'm sure I'll see you at the next big Florida event.
Absolutely. Have a good one. All right, people, let's move it on over to Rumble, because we're going to go over the story of we didn't get into that with Brian, but I know that he's going to have a similar perspective on the latest news of January 6th getting shot by a police officer. Link to Rumble is back in the chat. We're using StreamYard, so this will not be a supporters only on Locals if you want to come over there and enjoy the after party. Locals here. Bada bing, bada boom. There were some Rumble rants, which I will read as people migrate over to the free speech platform. Viva, can you please have CanCon on again? S'il vous plaît. That means please in French. Absolutely. Calcine Cujo. Then we got King of Biltong, who says, increase your protein intake with some great tasting meat snacks. Biltong is packed with B12, creatine, iron, zinc, and much more. Get some at biltongusa.com. Use code VIVA for 10% off. And he says, would Brian be interested in working with us? I will send you his info. Biltong, there's no one on earth who's a meat eater that would not be interested in working with you. You guys make amazingly delicious biltong, which is like beef prosciutto. I can send Brian some biltong to try first. Please email me. I'll give that to Brian immediately after this stream is over. And by the way, while everyone's trickling in there, Louis the Lobster returns to the sea. I think we're at like 170 books now. Because I've written a children's book for those of you who do not know. You all know. And we're getting a sequel. It's going to be called Harry the Heron. Louis the Lobster returns to the sea, illustrated by Abigail Martin. You can get it on Amazon. And Louis with an S, not an E, the Lobster. One of my family members was named Louis. I have to find a family member that was named Harry. Undoubtedly, somewhere in my lineage, there was someone named Harry. What are you doing, Harry? So check that out. It's on Amazon. Viva Fry for some merch. Right now, we're going to go over to Rumble, talk about the Jan Sixer who was shot, some other stories. Roger Ver. Going to talk about some Roger Ver. I'm genuinely trying to understand the hatred towards him. I think I have a better understanding of it. Nothing justifies what I think is clear-cut lawfare. We're going to do that. So I'm ending on CommieTube.